Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal and you're watching the Mojo Story. The Health Ministry of Uzbekistan has said that 18 children have died from taking excessive doses of a cough syrup, Doc 1 Max, which is manufactured by an Indian firm, Marion Biotech. These children reportedly died due to acute respiratory disease after consuming excessive amounts of the cough syrup. Now, reports say that the deceased children took the drug at home, which exceeds the standard dose, and they were given the drug without a doctor's prescription. The cough syrup is said to have contained a substance called ethylene glycol. Meanwhile, India has started a probe after the incident, and center has sought a casualty status from Uzbekistan. Now, Union Health Minister Mansukh Mandaviya tweeted saying that further action, as appropriate, would be initiated after inspection report. Samples of the syrup were also sent to laboratory in Chandigarh for testing. Meanwhile, political row has erupted after Congress Jairam Ramesh said that Modi Sarkar must stop boasting about India being a pharmacy to world and should take strictest action. BJP has retorted by saying Congress is blinded in its hate for Modi and continues to deride India and its entrepreneurial spirit. Now, to discuss this, we're joined by an eminent panel. We're joined by Dr. Rajesh Parekh, the Director of Medical Research, Jaslok Hospital. We're also joined by Prashant Reddy. We're joined by Mohan Kumar Mangalam of the Congress. We're also joined by Prashant Reddy, who's a lawyer and author of The Truth Pill. We're also joined by Ashwani Shahi of the BJP. And we are joined by PKD Nambiar, who's a political analyst. If I go to the doctor first, Dr. Rajesh Parekh, how can Uzbek authorities reach a conclusion that the deaths are caused by a cough syrup? Is it possible that that deaths can be caused by a cough syrup? I think we have lost our connection with him, but we'll try and get back to him. But coming to you, coming to you, Dr. Ashwani Sahi, if I can come to you from the BJP. The BJP has, in fact, retorted and replied to Jairam Ramesh's tweet. Don't you think that the issue has become political? It's a issue that has a different connotation altogether. But what do you have to say? आपका क्या कहना है?
जफर जी, भारतीय जनता पार्टी इस पर स्पष्ट रूप से देख रही। भारतीय जनता पार्टी कुछ नहीं कह रही। भारतीय जनता पार्टी ये देख रही है कि किस तरीके से कांग्रेस जो है विरोध में इतनी संलिप्त हो गई है कि उसको देश का अपमान करने में समय नहीं लगता है। जयराम रमेश जी बड़े ही सुलझे हुए और बड़े ही विद्वान और काबिल हैं। मुझे लगता है कि उनको राहुल जी की संगत का कुछ असर आ गया है, इस वजह से इस तरीके के बयानात दे रहे हैं। मगर उनको पिछली बात जो उन्होंने अपने ट्वीट में लिखा था, गाम्बिया का जिक्र किया था, भारत सरकार ने त्वरित गति से वहां पर जांच कराया और जांच कराकर उस फैक्ट्री को बंद कराया, हरियाणा सरकार ने। और भारत सरकार ने जांच किया और जांच करने के बाद ये पाया कि उसमें वो प्रतिबंधित चीजें नहीं है। इसके बावजूद भी जयराम रमेश साहब का ये बयान ये दिखाने के लिए काफी है कि जो है हिंदुस्तान को बदनाम हर मुद्दे पर बाहर ये लोग कैसे करते हैं। कोरोना के टाइम पर जिस तरीके से चाइनीज कोरोना को यहाँ पर हिंदुस्तानी कोरोना कहा गया, मोदी वैक्सीन कही गई, तो बहुत सी चीजें ऐसी हैं जो बाहर के देशों में कांग्रेस जाकर फैलाती है। और कांग्रेस विदेशी मंचों पर कोरोना में कई बार देखा गया, ये वहां की बाहर की जो है अखबार जो क्या लिख रहे थे उस पर प्रोपगंडा ये लोग कर रहे थे कि वहां पर ये हो गया, हाय तौबा मचा रहे थे। तो अब हिंदुस्तान को बदनाम करने का पहला और कांग्रेस का ये वो नहीं है। किस तरीके से राहुल जी के भाषणों को कोट किया था पाकिस्तान ने, सबने देखा था। मगर ये बड़ा ही संवेदनशील मुद्दा था, दवाइयों का, भारत की साख का। इनको ये लगा कि मेक इन इंडिया में भारत इस समय विश्व में सबसे बेहतर काम कर रहा है और दवाइयों की सप्लाई कर रहा है। उसमें अब मौका मिला है भारत को किस तरीके से प्रधानमंत्री जी को बदनाम किया जाए। इनको ये नहीं लगा कि अपना देश भी बदनाम होगा। तो देश के खिलाफ काम करने वाले ये कांग्रेसी लोग, ये मीर जाफर बन गए हैं इस समय, और इनको उससे कहीं दूर दूर तक जो है छुट्टी नहीं मिलने वाली है। ये मोदी विरोध में लिप्त है जी।
Why should this become a political issue in the first place? If I can go across to Mohan K. Mangalam, why should it become why should Jairam Ramesh write a tweet on this issue? Obviously, it should not be an issue of political point scoring.
देखिए, ये शो अंग्रेजी में हो रहा है तो मैं अंग्रेजी में कहूंगा, बट मैं पहले तो शाहिद जी को बोलना चाहता हूँ कि बेबुनियाद बातों पे मैं जवाब देना नहीं चाहूंगा। सो इन्होंने बहुत बातें कही हैं, आई विल नॉट मेक रिस्पॉन्स टू ऑल ऑफ देम, आई विल स्टे ऑन पॉइंट ऑन दिस इशू। एंड द इशू इज, अ वीक अगो a Gambian panel actually sent samples from the drugs that we are under discussion in Gambia, send it to a Swiss lab, and they received reports that diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol, both which are considered to be legal adulterants and are the heart of the problem here with these cough syrups, were present in those samples. So the Gambian issue is by no means closed, as Mr. Amit Malviya or people in the BJP would like to believe. It is an issue that is very much alive. Now, this issue is not also an issue that has erupted yesterday or day before. A year ago, 12 children died in Udhampur in Jammu from another cough syrup, again because of the presence of diethylene glycol or ethylene glycol, which are considered to be legal adulterants. The reason they're used is because paracetamol or acetaminophen are non-water soluble, and these are cheaper solvents to use than glycerine or propylene glycol that are actually to be used in such cough syrups. So this is really an issue of enforcement. This is an issue of that the CDSCO should take immediate cognizance of. And if Maiden, I think Maiden Pharmaceuticals was the one in Gambia, or the other company here, I'm forgetting its name, which is Marion Biotech or Marion Biotech.
Yeah.
If there's even a single case found of adulteration, then immediate action has to be taken to shut down their production and go into understanding where the systemic issues are. See, this isn't an issue to be treated in a trivial manner or to be made political. India is the pharmacy of the world, has been for a while. 20% of world export of generic drugs comes from India. Also be cognizant of the fact that this is in the regular smaller molecules. The larger molecules or the biologics is where India is trying to make a concerted push, because those are much more expensive to make, and it is a billion-dollar opportunity for India. However, if we make such missteps as we are making right now, as we made with Gambia, as we're probably making with Uzbekistan, then our international reputation will stand ruined. If foreign countries that do not have as stringent norms as the FDA does start to put stringent norms on us, then our cost of manufacturing will go up, our cost of compliance will go up, and we might lose a golden opportunity for India to grow in a market that is underserved right now, and that is very much in line with us. And listen, I will step outside of my political hat and say that the move to do production linked incentives for APIs is a good move by the government. I applaud it. But if you do not pull up these regulators who are not doing the job they deserve to do, we will suffer immense damage to our reputation in the international market.
But the government has always already started the action.
They started the action in Gambia as well, and so they started the action in Gambia as well. And where did that lead us? A week ago, Gambia has come out with a report with damning evidence against us again. We took a couple of samples and said everything is fine. We did typically what the government does: bury their head in the sand and treat every criticism as something that's against the country. Let me be very clear and say, criticizing the government is not criticizing the country. The country is much larger than the BJP, even though they would like to believe that they're the whole and sole protectors of this country.
Okay, we seem to have lost the connection with Dr. Rajesh Parikh again. But coming to you, PKD Nambiar, do you think that head should roll? It's not an issue that can be taken lightly. After all, India's image as being the pharmacy of the world has suffered a dent by such stories coming up frequently. There was a case in Gambia, and now this is the second such incident that's happened.
Well, I will not go into the merit of it because I am neither a chemical engineer nor I am not an expert in the pharmacy. But
Yeah,
I'm an expert in politics, and I can comment on that to start with.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
also an entrepreneur, so I understand how the business
yes,
works. It is
yeah,
not as the way it is. I'm not going to say that all those had happened may not have some merit. All these complaints, maybe these deaths might have happened because of the medicine. It may not be. There is an
yeah,
investigation is on both in our land and as well as on the other side of the world. It
yeah,
is still not been final. My worry here is that a country which is, as my co-panelist has said, that the pharma capital of the world. There are one or two small incidents. Maybe if I say this small, then they will jump up and say that it is not a small incident. So many lives have gone, which we are not too sure it is. Is it because of this medicine or not? Now the question is that a responsible political party which ruled this country for 50-55 years, and a very responsible leader of that party taking on to a Twitter and maligning the image of the very country. There's multiple platform for a political leader to reach out to the government. He can write a letter, a private letter, have a discussion, whatever it may
yeah.
be. Going onto an international or a social media platform and saying, and if you can show that tweet once again and say that anybody whomsoever understand the basic English or the basic fundamental, it shows some kind of a hatred towards the country. And I can't understand that why such needs to be done. Just imagine that made in India cough syrup seems to be deadly. First, it was the deaths of 70 kids. How can Jairam Ramesh can be confirm that it was because of that? Is the Gambian government has confirmed that yet? Not yet even. Even the inquiry there is still happening, and there are some kind of, as you yourself said, that there are some steps the companies have the authorities have taken here as well. So I think it is just to insult some kind of a I don't know some kind of a feeling they get, that sadistic pleasure they get while criticizing India. The Modi hatred had gone into the vein. I think this is not acceptable, and this is not something which we expect from a an opposition party. I am for questioning the government. That is the role of a political party. But when you question and country for a mistake of a particular company, or for that matter to a particular product of a company, that company may have 100 products. They may be 99.9 of them may be doing excel, maybe doing very well, but one product has something has done, maybe a malpractice, maybe a mistake, whatever it may be. Then you question a country. What kind of a common
Okay,
sense is this?
okay,
Can I ask you something? If a Mojo story tomorrow a story which may not be right, which may do some kind of a fact check, may have gone wrong, will you say that the whole Indian media is corrupt and bad, and this needs to be? Is that the way you communicate? And if that is the case, I think Jairam Ramesh required to go to the not to any college anymore, but to start from the nursery again. This is
okay.
not the politics we wanted.
Right, right.
There are symptoms in place.
Let's try and ask Prashant Reddy, who's a lawyer and author. Prashant, what does the law say? Do you think it's time to revisit the drug regulatory laws in the country?
Well, so unfortunately, you're actually asking the wrong questions, and it's also a real pity the way that you have framed this entire debate based on Jairam Ramesh's tweet. Adulterated
No, actually,
cough syrups are a
we
very
wanted to go to
serious
the
case.
doctor, but we seem to losing the line with
No, well,
with the doctor.
I'm going to tell you.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you what problem is. I wrote a book on it.
yeah,
Adulterated
yeah,
cough syrups are a very, very serious, dangerous problem. Our
yeah,
first response should not be about finding a person to throw in jail or throw under the bus. We need to
yeah,
make sure that no Indian children are going to die, Indian or for that matter, other children in other countries are going to die because of this cough syrup. The way to do that is to conduct a swift, transparent investigation, conduct a root cause analysis to find out where the contamination entered the supply chain. Because you must understand the fact that we've had two mass DEG poisoning events, one in Gambia, one in in Uzbekistan, and both are being traced to Indian companies which are a mere 100 kilometers apart. One is in Sonipat, one is in Noida. There's a very high probability that both companies purchase the same contaminated ingredients from the same chemical trader. And our immediate response should be not this bickering between political parties. We need to source, find out where the material came from, because I can guarantee you there are other companies which are also using the same contaminated ingredients. We need to find out which companies are using these ingredients and effect a global recall of all these cough syrups. Because as all of you have said, India is considered to be the pharmacy of the world. So we are exporting these cough syrups. It's very possible that this intermediate adulterated chemical ingredient has come from across the border. I'll give you an example. 15 years ago in Panama, 365 people died because of adulterated cough syrup. The main ingredient which was adulterated came from China, right? So this in a global environment where you're trading chemicals across borders, etc., our first job should be to ensure that more people don't die. And that requires journalists like you to frame the debate properly. You cannot frame this across
Yes.
over Jairam Ramesh's tweet. That's absolutely ridiculous.
We are not actually framing it around that tweet. As I said, that we wanted to understand from the doctor, but we are unfortunately losing the line to him. But very relevant points that you have raised. Should there be a doubt? Should there be a doubt, Mohan K. Mangalam, that we should look into the
I'm
matter
so
very
happy.
seriously? We should look into the
Yes.
matter very seriously and try and find out the ingredients, the process of procuring the substances that go into the making of those drugs. It's not that one company, as there was this case in one company and just 100 kilometers away another company. It could possibly be that they are procuring the things from the same source. Shouldn't those be the important things that should be looked upon and focused upon by political parties rather than point scoring?
I agree with you, which is what I'm saying. So, what did Mr. Jairam Ramesyan, and I'll only say this once more because I completely agree with Prashant Reddy here that this is not the issue to discuss. Rather, the most systemic issues with our supply chain around something like this are the important things to discuss. I'm a father of 2 kids and I regularly use cough syrup when required. So, this is something that it hits home even on the domestic front, much more than even the international reputation. It is about saving lives, as he rightly said so. Now, what we're talking about is taking strict action, not burying your head in the sand. This isn't an anti-India sentiment. Holding the government accountable to when something was discovered in a case 3 months ago in Gambia. Why wasn't more profound root cause analysis done, as Prashant is pointing out? Why didn't a more detailed investigation was done in that aspect? Instead, we just took a few samples from that manufacturer, said, hey, it looks like there's no adulteration, and we washed our hands off the matter. Said that, okay, we're going to take on the WHO now. Because, and by the way, the WHO has not rescinded on any of its findings so far, or come back and said that India is right and we are relooking at the matter. So the only thing Jairam Ramesh is saying is take strict action and do it fast. Why wasn't it done the last time around? And his reference to Gambia is saying that when you already had an issue, why wasn't action taken then? How many more discoveries have to happen before you end up looking at it more seriously?
Okay, Dr. Rajesh Parik, I hope you can hear us now. I was just asking you that how did the Uzbek authorities reach the conclusion that deaths are caused by the cough syrup, and can actually such a thing happen? We're talking about the deaths in Gambia. There was a case in Udhampur. Can you explain to us that how can these investigations proceed and how do they reach to the conclusion so fast? Okay, if you can unmute.
Yes, I hope you can hear me now. I did hear you clearly.
Yes.
Pardon me if I am a bit repetitive because I did lose you all in between for a segment of the discussion. Yeah. But I gather there are 3 sub-questions over here. How did they arrive at this conclusion? That's straightforward. I mean, there is a cause-effect thing which can be clearly established, not the primary cause, but that there was a correlate between the consumption of this syrup and the deaths that occurred. In terms of, how does this actually occur? Now, this is an instance in which, sadly, the optics are going to eclipse completely the technicalities. So the technicalities are of interest, but the optics will be larger. And of course, the ethical issue underlies all of this. Incidentally, this has been very much on my mind in the last few weeks. A few weeks ago, a colleague of mine, the grandson, who's 20 months old, was given a cough syrup in an appropriate dose here in India. And that child lost pulse, blood pressure. Fortunately, both grandparents are doctors. The granddad is an eminent gynecologist, the grandmother an eminent anesthetist. But for 20 minutes, the child was hovering between life and death and was eventually resuscitated only because they got in time to a major hospital. So this has been very much on our minds. We've been discussing it, with my colleagues. But coincidentally, just 2 days ago, I was in an interview on CNN, and this is an unrelated matter related to spurious drugs reaching China in its current crisis. And I alluded to what happened in Gambia. And I said, if we don't have strict controls in place, and if something that is spurious enters China, it will be a catastrophe. And then, of course, now we have what has happened currently. So first of all, historically, there has been a problem with cough syrups and the things that are added to it. I think, as was rightly pointed out in the discussion, that this is a solvent and it's an inexpensive solvent. So there's a temptation to use it. But there has been a problem historically with cough syrups. I mean, about nearly 200 years ago, when codeine was first discovered as a cough suppressant, and it's a partial derivative of opium. They had discovered, and at that time it was not available as a syrup, but as a gel, as some kind of a jelly. And they discovered in the UK that children would line up outside schools because there were sandwich dealers who would apply that as a kind of a jam and put it between bread because it is cheaper than jam, it being medication, and children got addicted to it. So the larger issue, of course, death is terrible, but there's also a huge issue below this is the addictive properties. Fentanyl is becoming a big problem added to cough syrups. These opiate derivatives are a problem. And now the glycol component, the alcohol component in it, which is used as a solvent, can cause death. That has been established. Now the technicalities. Did they use it inappropriately? Did they use larger doses? These are issues, that one can argue endlessly. But the point is that there are additives which can be dangerous. And so we need to take steps to rectify this, because as has been pointed out repeatedly in the program, that this tarnishes our excellent pharma industry, particularly when it comes to generics. So we must immediately take corrective action. I hope you have answered all three of your questions.
Okay, Prashant, how can the things be rectified? Is there a mechanism that such syrups will be taken off from the markets? Dr. Rajesh was explaining the whole thing. People don't really know it. People suffer, they have a bout of cough, they go and buy the medicine. Actually, it's that easy, but it's not so easy. Things are very complicated.
Yes, Mr. Iqbal, you're absolutely right. So one of the problems in India is that we don't have a national drug recall law. So, for example, the moment we realize that a particular drug has failed quality testing in a particular lab, we don't have a system to recall it across the country. And this is particularly difficult in India because we have a federated system of drug regulation, wherein every state and union territory has its own drug regulator, and they can operate only within the territorial jurisdiction of their own state. So even if the government does, finally analyze and find out which of the batches are adulterated, actually coordinating a nationwide response to recall all these adulterated batches is very, very difficult in India. And if I can just go back to the Jammu incident, which happened in January 2020, when 11 children died in Udhampur, they died at the PGIMAR hospital in Chandigarh. The government had told all the state drug regulators, you withdraw the product of this particular company, which is suspected to be the manufacturer. 8 months later, another 2-year-old child from Badi in Himachal Pradesh was admitted to PGIMAR, and she died over there eventually. The doctors over there, since they were, they had already diagnosed the previous 11 deaths 8 months previously. They looked at the manufacturer and they discovered that it was the same manufacturer, but a different brand of cough syrup that they were manufacturing. So this shows you the dangers of not conducting that initial investigation in a transparent manner, wherein you identify precisely what has caused the deaths of the contamination of that cough syrup. Because unless you do that, you don't know what to recall from the market.
अश्विनी शाही, काफी जरूरी है कि एक सही तरीके से इन्वेस्टिगेशन हो. अगर ये उधमपुर में इस तरह का इंसिडेंट हुआ तो जैसे प्रशांत जी बोल रहे थे कि दोबारा से इस तरह का इंसिडेंट एक नाम बदल के फिर एक ऐसे केस सामने आया, जरूरत नहीं है कि इस चीज को बड़ा सीरियसली लिया जाए और एक प्रॉपर इन्वेस्टिगेशन की जाए. किसी को भी कॉफ होता है तो वो जाके बाजार में दवाई ले लेता है, कोई इस तरह का कोई मैकेनिज्म तो है नहीं.
जफर जी, जरूरी है, एकदम हर चीज की जरूरत है और सरकारें उसके लिए जो है काम कर रही हैं. अब हम गाम्बिया वाला ही एक एग्जांपल ले रहे हैं, बाकी हमारे कांग्रेस के मित्र ने कहा, बाकी कई लोगों ने जो भी बातें कहना था अपने हिसाब से कहेंगे. लेकिन अगर हम पॉलिटिकली देख रहे हैं इस चीज को, मामला जहां से भी सीरियस था, हरियाणा गवर्नमेंट ने जैसे ही वो मुद्दा आया तुरंत उस फैक्ट्री को बंद करा दिया. दूसरा, उसके बाद उसकी जांच की गई. डॉक्टर प्रमोद गुप्ता के नेतृत्व में 4 सदस्यीय कमेटी की गठित की गई. उन लोगों ने उसके प्रोडक्ट में कोई गड़बड़ी नहीं पाई. अब भारत सरकार को अगर गड़बड़ी नहीं मिल रही है, माननीय मंत्री ने राज्यसभा में इसको बताया कि मॉडर्न फार्मा जो है वो उसकी प्रोडक्ट में कोई गड़बड़ी नहीं पाई गई है. उसके बाद डायरेक्टर जनरल ड्रग कंट्रोलर ने गाम्बिया WHO को चिट्ठी लिखा है कि आप कारण बताइए कि किस कारण से गाम्बिया में लोग मरे. लेकिन WHO ने अभी तक कोई उनके पत्र का जवाब नहीं दिया है और हम यहां बैठकर भारत सरकार को दोषी कहें, ये कौन सी बात है? गाम्बिया ने कुछ नहीं कहा. गाम्बिया के बाद में कहीं किसी उसके वहां से आया था कि नहीं, उसके और भी कारण हो सकते हैं, कई दवाइयां बच्चों ने लिया था, सिर्फ कफ सिरप नहीं लिया था. इसको किसी ने नहीं कोट किया. और उसके बाद माननीय जयराम रमेश जी का ये बयान लिखते हुए उनका आपने अभी कई बार ट्वीट दिखाया कि उसमें लिखा था मेड इन इंडिया के बारे में कि मोदी जी मेड इन इंडिया का ढोल पीटना बंद कीजिए. ये क्या दर्शाता है? हिंदुस्तान को अंतरराष्ट्रीय जगत में बदनाम करने की कांग्रेस की ये साजिश है. जैसे ये लोग चाइना से MOU करके चले जाते हैं राहुल गांधी जी.
We'll get a reaction from the Congress. But before that, I want to go across to PKD Nambia because he's also an entrepreneur. You know, the point that was raised by Prashant, there is this tendency that if there is no perfect investigation, if there is no punishment and strict measures that are not taken, the company will do the same thing in a different name with a different methodology, but actually in effect do the same thing, as was pointed out by Prashant. What can be done to change that? PKD, if you can hear me.
I'm sorry, I was not known to that this question was to me. See, I think
Yes.
the broader idea is that there is nothing called as absolutely perfect. In Indian manufacturing sector or Indian pharma sector is absolutely 100% perfect. I'm sorry, I will never say that. Nor even in US or in any other country, it may not be. But I can tell you one thing for very sure, that because I work for a couple of pharma companies, but some of them are very leading, some of them are international companies as their agency. I can tell you one thing, that they are either equal or sometimes even better. So I think putting a question mark on India's ability or India's systems in one straight go, that it's all very bad, is not in the right spirit. Yes, as I said, that every system would have some kind of a loophole. So as I believe that even in our Indian drug control systems, our sourcing systems and everything may require some kind of an improvement. And I don't think that is there anything which do not require an improvement. Everything requires an improvement. Maybe better system needs to be coming in. But does that ever make you give to go around and tell the world that in India's whole system is bad? I mean, that's where it hurts. And that's not the right way of an approach, whether it is politically or even as an entrepreneurially or as a business or in any means, that is not the right way. So we need to look at when a very responsible people do make some kind of a comment. As my earlier panelist was talking about the Gambia, he has explained it very well. Even when can you really confirm that an incident take place? Is that those kids were given multiple medicines? Do any of us have the data in this panel? We may not. So we just put that there is a blame. There may be a chance that it could be because of that. What the government can do, the government can do research, the government can do inquiry. If they are not finding it anything, but you.
PKD, what has been reported? What has been reported that we can perhaps ask Dr. Rajesh Parikh that the children took the drug which exceeded the dosage and without the doctor's prescription.
My dear friend, can I ask you something? So I'll just come one any drug, in every drug it is written on top of it as prescribed, the dosage as prescribed by the physician. If somebody takes that drug more than what it was supposed to be, and it might have a side effect, will you actually go and say that the product is bad? Will you say that the country's manufacturing system is bad? That is not the question.
That's what we're trying to understand from Dr. Rajesh Parikh.
But my only I'll tell you, the voice in this panel gives an impression that an industry which is thriving industry, which has been really really supported the whole world even during the COVID time. Let us not, you criticize, that's okay. That is absolutely fine. But don't look at and paint an industry with a suspicion and say that all this happens in this country is bad, and everything which you import from China, even or for US, you have all the love for it.
Dr. Rajesh Parikh, can you hear me? Dr. Rajesh Parikh,
yes, I can.
Basically, the question that I was asking you, purely from a doctor's point of view, the reports say that, the dosage was more and there was no prescription according to which the drugs were taken. That's an important factor that cannot be ignored in this case.
Cannot be ignored, but this is precisely what I was alluding to in my preamble to your previous set of questions, that the optics are completely larger than the technicalities. Was it an appropriate dose? Was it rightfully given? These are questions which are debatable. But, the larger issue that Indian drugs were used and Indian cough syrup was used, 18 children died, it completely shadows everything else that is good that we're doing. And if I may, on a positive note, just share an inside story with you, a more positive story. About a decade ago, an Indian pharmaceutical was manufacturing so much generic ibuprofen, an anti-inflammatory drug, that the company, and it was of course off patent by then, and the parent company in Germany decided that they would just buy everything from here and then label it and sell it there. And they approached the pharmaceutical and said that you don't put this in generics, we're going to buy whatever you can manufacture, your entire supply, but we have to be in charge. And then they added a caveat and they said that only one thing, the purity of the product has to be, I forget the precise number, but let's say in the vicinity of 97%. And if you can match that, we'll take it. And the chief scientist famously said, sir, if I have to do that, I'm afraid I'll have to adulterate my product because currently it is at a 99% level of purity and we exceed your standard. So there is a larger greatness and wonderful things happening with the generic industry in our country, everything to be proud of. All the more reason why we have to be very careful to ensure that incidents like this do not happen, because
Okay. Mohan K. Mangalam, you want to come in before we hand over to Prashant for the last word?
Yes, actually, I'm going to refer to something Prashant said because I want to bring us back to that, which is the manufacturer of the cough syrup that was going to Gambia was not supplying anything domestically. It was only supplying to Gambia. You must ask yourself why the drugs that we're exporting to Western countries like the US and Europe, you're not finding these issues, but you're finding them in slightly lesser developed Eastern European countries of Uzbekistan or the continent of Africa. It is possibly because they are not coming down here to enforce the kind of standards that these European and the American companies do when they get the drugs manufactured out of India. India is capable of upliving and outliving those standards, going above and beyond, as the doctor just rightly pointed out. My biggest concern is that when we rely on the CDSCO, when we rely on our own drug enforcers, which are set up in a federal system, the way Prashant rightly pointed out, then when we are finding these issues, we need to go in more deeper. And this Make in India thing is a bit of a bogey, because 70% of the activated pharmaceutical ingredients that are used are from China. So is there something that we're importing in from China that might be causing this issue?
That is what Prashant pointed out earlier.
No,
Yeah.
Prashant did not say that. Prashant said overall, he said do a root cause analysis. Damn it, just don't take samples from one bloody manufacturer you've had this issue in and close the story. This is a far bigger issue here. So for God's sake, let's not be political about this. I'm not even wanting to respond to Mr. Shahi's political rhetoric, because I think this is a far more important issue. And we need to really look at the fact that our drug regulators, the way they're set up right now, in the structure they are we keeping our children safe? If there's a drug that's being exported to the US and Europe, I guarantee you I'm not worried about that. They're down here. I have friends in the pharma industry. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I know how stringent they are with their regulations and how they make sure they do random checks, and they've shut down factories that don't obey. So for
Prashant,
we need to be clear about our
different regulations for some countries and different regulations for other countries. That's an important point that's been brought about. Are these companies bound by any laws, so to say? We know there are quality controls different for different countries, but can they be held accountable in the end?
Well, yes. I mean, India does have a law. It's a very old law called the Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940. But when they're exporting drugs, they're held accountable by the standards of even the importing country. So, for example, the United States regularly sends its drug inspectors to inspect manufacturing plants in India, and they have to comply with American standards. Countries in Africa and, say, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, who don't have the resources, depend primarily on the CDSCO and the state drug regulators to do an efficient job, because they don't have the resources to send their drug inspectors to India to regulate, to inspect. And that is why it is widely known amongst the pharma industry that there are two different standards followed by the pharma industry. That is, the drugs being exported to the US, EU tend to be of far higher quality than drugs that are sold in India or in Africa. And that's unfortunately the pharma industry just responding to different incentives, given by these different countries. And if I can just add, this is a very very complicated issue, because if you look at our track record in prosecuting these kind of offenses, even domestically, it is terrible. In 1988, you may remember there was a famous incident in JJ Hospital where about 14 people died because of a similar incident, DEG poisoning. The prosecution in that case is still not over. There's a journalist in the Scroll who covered it recently, and she discovered the prosecution is still not over. The incident in Jammu, where 11 children died, a charge sheet was filed only in 2022, mid-2022. And we don't even know if that prosecution is going to succeed. So these are issues that are extremely complicated because of governance, the way governance is in India. And politics does have some role to play in it. I mean, I will concede that, before the BJP, when the Ranbaxy scandal happened, the UPA government was in power, they didn't change much. They blamed all of this on some American conspiracy to defame Indian pharma industry. Because the pharma industry is so powerful, it is so politically entrenched, that there's only so much even the political parties can do against this very powerful industry.
That's a very serious matter, if I can say. But clearly, different yardsticks for different countries, and the process are so slow that they never see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's never clear that things have been followed to the end. But that brings us to the end of our discussion. Thanks to all of our panelists for joining. That's all we have in today's show. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.